review just to set the stage here on S65, which is a placeholder for paid sick days, paid leave, income replacement. Main Street Alliance has a terminology for it, but just to get at some issue, some discussion around this, and I think we have Beth Fastigi and Kevin Gaffney with us. But if you could just, it's a great tall order for Damien, but 5 minutes maybe as to what happened in the past, saying what I could do it too, but let Damien, what the governor had proposed and what the variations in the House and the Senate and what the bill that got vetoed.
Sure. So for
Smiling.
the record, I love when people call me out for being a little bit loquacious.
No, that was not
that about you, Damien.
That was not it. I was laughing at it. It's like it's a tall task to do in 5 minutes. It was weird to put into that.
Yeah. So no, for the record, Damien Leonard, Legislative Counsel. So very quickly, taking us back to 2019, there were two main proposals in front of the State House. One, or in front of the General Assembly. One was a voluntary paid leave plan that the governor put forward, which was originally a twin state plan with New Hampshire. That eventually became a single state plan that at this point was negotiated between the union and the administration. That plan was at least temporarily put on hold, and Commissioner Fastigi can give us more details on that. But the other plan that was originally introduced from the House was a plan that would have been a fully state administered and funded paid leave plan, offering 12 weeks of paid leave for bonding, the employee's own injury and or illness, and then caring for a family member with an injury or illness. The eventual House plan that came out involved a hybrid version. So that was amended to have a hybrid where the state would contract with a private insurance provider. And that was intended as a hybrid between the governor's voluntary paid leave plan and the House's original state administered paid leave plan. That came over to the Senate. In the Senate's main modification to that plan, apart from tweaking some of the leave amounts, was to make the insurance for taking time off to care for the employee's own serious illness or injury voluntary. So employees could elect to enroll in that as additional coverage, but the coverage for bonding leave and for the illness or injury of a family member was mandatory. So what you ended up with, I think, was the House version had roughly a 0.56% tax across the board. The Senate version had a much lower tax of somewhere around 0.2% for everyone. But then if you wanted to get the additional coverage for your own illness or injury, you would add 0.38% just because of the adverse selection that would go into that. And so the coverage there, because it's a smaller pool, would be a little more expensive for those folks, but then across the board, it would be smaller expense, and kept the private insurance company as the administrator. That was vetoed by the governor, as we all know, and the veto override failed in the House by 1 vote. And that brings us up to today, where the bill that's in front of the committee, S65, is essentially the bill that was vetoed by the governor. There was also a bill from last biennium that reflected the governor's twin state proposal put in by Senator Brock. And that is not in front of the committee this biennium, but that was the language that was available. And I'm happy to send that to committee members if you would like to look at it. I think I did 5 minutes.
You did actually did a great job. But
That was fab.
did we vote? Did the Senate vote to override, or we never got the opportunity?
That's
I
a
don't
good
think we had the
question.
opportunity. The House went first. It was a House bill originally.
Yeah, I don't know which bill went to the governor. Was the House bill or the Senate bill?
It was H107 that went to the governor.
So,
Yeah.
the
So
House
the
would've-
Senate took the lead on minimum wage, and the House took the lead on paid leave that biennium.
and you were in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
it was. As was Joyce.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Stand by. I'd like to move to Kevin, if we could. We've been having DFR and it seems weekly to try and get an update, and we're told that probably by next week we'll have more information. So I'm hoping we do have more information today. Kevin, welcome.
Yes, thank you. For the record, Kevin Gaffney, Deputy Commissioner of Insurance at the Department of Financial Regulation. Yes, actually, it was fortuitous. I was attending a national conference and ran into the commissioner in New Hampshire, and we struck up a conversation on this. And so they were happy to give us more information. So we were fortunate to connect quickly with them last week to get an update on their plan, because I thought it might be helpful to just level set, since it's been a little while, on what transpired in New Hampshire and what the components of the New Hampshire plan are. And I guess before I go into that, I think the overarching approach by the administration is that this still maintains its voluntary components, but we want to kind of walk through the New Hampshire plan, and that might generate some additional thoughts and questions on the part of the committee.
Great.
So the New Hampshire passed their program in June of 21, and it was incorporated into their budget bill instead of being a separate program. And it's not a traditional employer payroll funded benefit. The program is created is voluntary, similar to the approach Vermont wishes to take. The insurance carriers selected through the competitive process will offer. They use FMLI. That's what's in this memo. We've used PFL as the acronym, but acronyms are acronyms. We all mean a version of paid family leave to the employers in the state, and employees can then choose whether to opt into the plan. And participating employers may opt out to fully fund employee premiums, split the costs, or have the employee cover the whole cost. There's an individual pool component in New Hampshire, and the coverage would be available to employees who do not qualify for employer coverage and whose employers do not participate in the plan. By law, the premium for the individual pool will be capped at $5 per week. And just contextually, that's not far from the estimated cost, which is probably closer to $5.75 a week. And participation in the individual pool in New Hampshire has a 7-month waiting period. So what that means is there's actually premiums paid for 7 months before the coverage takes effect, a 1-week elimination period, and a 60-day open enrollment period. Covered employees who need to be out of work for a qualifying reason will receive 60% of their wages up to 6 weeks, which is similar to, I think, the approach we're considering in terms of the level of benefit. There's qualifying reasons here. These qualifying reasons in New Hampshire are specific to New Hampshire. Vermont's might be slightly different, but very similar in general. And the law permits those participating employers who require employees to take family medical leave to take it concurrently with other leave. So for instance, if they wanted to use the program and get the 6 weeks of 60% benefit, they could additionally take another 6 weeks of unpaid leave to have a 12-week leave affected.
Did I stop you there? I didn't quite follow that part. You're saying that they could take 6 weeks of unpaid leave. They don't have to, right? I mean, if they're not sick, they're not going to take it, but
So they don't have to, but if they wish to, they do it concurrently with the benefit.
I'm not sure. So
I
In other
thought-
words, it's all used at one point in time.
So if you have, are you talking about the federal unpaid benefit that's required by law? Or are you talking, I mean, or does this law also allow for another 6 weeks of unpaid leave with job security to come back?
Not additional. It's all under all of these programs would be generally would have to comply with the federal FMLA, right? And that's the 12 weeks, and I think it's perhaps more for bonding, but you know, we these are all under the umbrella of the federal requirements.
So
Yeah,
So-
well, we can revisit that. That's going to get kind of technical.
just for people to know, this is on our website under Emily Kisicki's memo. It's got all that Kevin is outlining.
Oh yes, I hope
Kevin,
all the
you said
committee
something
members
that
have that.
You said something that concerns me. Did you say it all has to be taken at the same time? All that you have to do all 6 weeks at the same time?
I won't get into the, I'm gonna give you what I understand now.
Okay.
And the highlights, and rather than try to guess the very narrow specifics here, I would say that happy to get further clarification on that.
Right. Okay.
Because we've just had like an initial conversation with New Hampshire, and this is kind of the
No, this
summary
is
of that.
this is great. And they're in the RFP process. So they're still
They expect to issue their RFP later in March, and would likely have a response by the middle to end of April. And their employees in a participating program with 50 or more employers are provided with the protected leave. There's also and I'm now down. These are bullets, so I know it's sometimes hard to follow, but I'm down below the 3 arrows. So the next bullet, if you have the memo, and I'll give committee members a chance to get it if they don't.
the incentive language.
Everyone have it? Okay, and there's an incentive there, and that would basically be, there's an enterprise business tax in New Hampshire, so this would be a 50% credit for those premiums paid against that business enterprise tax. The law creates an FMLI premium stabilization trust fund funded primarily through the premium tax. So the premium tax on the taxes for this premium, this program premium, would be used exclusively to ensure that premiums paid by enrollees in the individual pool kind of stay at that $5 per week cap. Additionally, similar to, I think, the administration's desire to have this program administered by the private insurance company. Additionally, in New Hampshire, the law does create an advisory board that grants administrative rulemaking authority to the insurance department. And as Senator Clarkson already said, New Hampshire is in the midst of the RFP process now. When we were asked to testify, when Commissioner Pichek was asked to testify last week, I thought it'd be best also, just timing wise, to have Commissioner Fastigi talk about the RFI process that we're undertaking, and certainly in the midst of receiving a lot of good Q&A back and forth, but I won't steal her thunder. But I'm happy to assist in any additional questions either there or on this summary.
Well, the big question I have, I think probably there are a lot of questions, obviously, but this bullet about an incentive to sign up private employers give 50% credit against the business. So do you have any idea what the business enterprise tax is? And I mean, if it's a very minor tax, 50% credit of a very minor thing might not be much of an incentive. And does it come out of the New Hampshire General Fund? Uh, and when you say participating private employers, does that mean those employers who are going to pay 100% of the premium for all their employees?
So this would be another, I think, more detailed discussion. I think the other thing that I would say is that the administration is certainly open to hearing about interest or thoughts on any incentives that the legislature may be considering. But specific to that tax, I don't know what the level of the tax is, but remember, this would be a credit of 50% of whatever premiums are paid by the employer.
That's not okay. That's big. That's important. But the way it's written, it says, well, I read it to mean that you'd save 50% on whatever your business enterprise tax was. You're saying they get 50% of credit or whatever they pay towards the FMLA program. That's a big distinction.
Correct.
Okay.
Which, let's just, for argument's sake, 250 to 275 a year per employee. So if they paid that, they would get half that as a credit. As I understand it, I haven't looked closely at the tax code, but certainly a question we can get clarified.
Well, I certainly welcome the comment that the governors or the administration is willing to work with us in terms of incentives. But am I reading too much into this, that if we copied what New Hampshire does, the administration would be very open to that? Because I mean, that's a 50% payment by the state for this program is a big deal.
Yeah, I think the specifics we have not spent any time considering, but I would say that if the committee or the legislature has particular desires, then I think there's a lot more work that would need to be done. But that would be the starting point, I think, is to we're open to kind of bring in a voluntary program that is kickstarted by establishing the phase one, as we call it, in the Vermont program, where we would use the state employee pool as the phase one. It will allow us to establish immediately a market, establish a good administrative practice for delivering paid family leave. And I think it would also incent other insurers from participating, because the phase one would be an insurer, but the market, the phase 2 and 3, employers and individuals could be multiple insurers providing the coverage, which is always a good thing when you have competition.
So let me cut to the chase here, and it's important that we understand each other going forward. This can be a very complicated program with many moving parts, which we would all have to agree on. But what we've articulated, I think, from both Commissioner Pichek and myself and other committees of the other members of the committee, is that the divide, or the chasm, and if you want to put it another way, is that we both want to see something established in the form of paid leave. The question is voluntary versus mandatory. Our position has been, if you don't make it universal and mandatory, the cost due to adverse selection is going to be prohibitive, and you're not going to get a successful program. The administration has been saying, well, we're going to have a platform which to start with the state employees, and we're putting taxpayer dollars into that to get 8,000 people covered. And then anybody else who wants to join in can. I mean, that's helpful in the sense that there's something out there to join in, but if the price is prohibitively expensive, we feel, and you're an insurance expert, Kevin, that the program's going to fizzle and you're not going to get the participation that you want. It looks like this program has an incentive, and you said the administration is open to discussing incentives that might change the dynamic. You know, maybe it's not totally mandatory, and maybe it's not totally voluntary. It's somewhere in between. It's voluntary with an incentive. So that's, you know, if that's what's happening in New Hampshire, and that's what's being suggested, possibly as something to talk about, you know, we certainly want to pursue that, or at least I do. So,
yeah, just to be clear, I mean, I'm here to provide a summary of what transpired in New Hampshire, because I didn't know if the committee was aware of all the details. Well, you weren't, because that's why you asked Commissioner Pichek to provide these details. So we're doing that. Where it goes is really, we'll leave it up to the committee to decide.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Randy has a question, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Senator Brock, I don't have the pictures up, so please go ahead.
Just a question, as just thinking back to when we looked at the voluntary program before, somewhere I recall that the state did get some estimates of pricing as to what the effect would be to add these voluntary people to the state policy. And that was one of the things that made it appear to be attractive, because it was not prohibitive. Were you involved in that, or do you have any recollection, Commissioner, of any of that?
Yeah, we had done, initially we had done with New Hampshire RFI, and we were able to get some pricing from vendors about pricings for what we anticipated would be for state employees, and then kind of extending that out to other employers and what that would be. And it really was not, it's not necessarily a cost prohibitive plan. The paid family leave, the family leave component is less expensive than the insurance for the self, the short-term type disability insurance. But it really, it wasn't that expensive in the grand scheme of things. We had budgeted for our state employee $2.5 million annually for this program to be able to implement the program, and that would have been for originally that would have been for the short-term disability as well as the leave for the family. So if you were just going to do the family, it would be considerably less.
You know, now we're getting into the depths of insurance pricing, but I think maybe I'm over my head, Kevin, in this, but it seems like in terms of the pricing for the state employees, you get the benefit with 8,000 people with no ability to adverse select of a lower pricing. If you open it up to the world and only people who are about to have a pregnancy or something like that sign up, then to that market, it might be substantially higher. And like I say, I may be over my head with this, but anyhow, I'm interested in hearing about this 50% credit more, and how much the state of New Hampshire ponied up here to cover this.
Michael, Beth had her hand up. If you don't have your
Beth, I
picture.
was going to give you an opportunity to testify next.
Oh, okay. I can just keep going with the questions, or I don't actually have a presentation prepared like Kevin. So,
okay. Well, if people have other questions for Kevin, are you done with your presentation at this point, or do you have more to say?
No, well, I'll say from a pricing standpoint in insurance, it's all about where we end up with a plan design, right? We have to know what the plan design is, what the components are, elimination periods, waiting periods. All those things are going to affect pricing. So we went through that process before, so we have some anticipatory knowledge. But if the plan design changes from the prior outcome, then that's going to change the pricing.
Okay.
But I did hear you say it was 1575 in New Hampshire roughly. And
No, the individual cap that New Hampshire laid out was the $5 per week. And with the actual cost estimate is not far from that cap. It's about $5.75.
Yeah.
So that's a flat fee. It's not a payroll tax based as a percentage. I seem to remember from, and Damien can correct us, that the Senate version was something like 28 million, and in terms of payroll tax coming out of employees' paychecks, and the House version was something like 60 or 70 million dollars coming out of payroll for employees, and that was with a universal system. I don't know how that compares to $5 a week, but it seems like one certainly is more progressive than the other. You know, the percentage payroll would be more progressive than a flat $5 a week. But anyhow, I mean, obviously there's a lot of details here. I'm hoping if there's an opening here, we can, perhaps do some general legislation to move this along. I don't know if it's a study or something that opens the door to something that the House can continue to work for, and maybe put it as part of our economic development bill. Okay, Beth, if there are no other questions, I don't have the people up. Let me see if I get people back
Right,
up.
Beth is ready to go. We only have 10 minutes before the floor.
Okay.
That's correct. It's Friday. I forgot. Okay. Beth.
Yeah. So where we are is we recently published a request for information from insurance providers. The deadline for those responses is March 4th. We received a fair number of questions from insurance providers, so we expect that we will get some responses for the providers on how to better frame the next steps would be going out to RFP. We initially went out for an RFP right at the time of when the pandemic started. We ended up pulling that RFP back. And we wanted to kind of step back and do another reset of that at this point, because a lot may have changed in this market in the past couple of years based on the pandemic, and different states have started their plans. So the insurance carriers now have more information about costs and plan design. So we're looking for that to inform the next steps, which would be the RFP. And the phases in our RFP are: phase 1 would be state employees, and then shortly thereafter that phase 2 offer that same plan through this insurance company or companies to other employers at similar plan design to the state of Vermont. So phase 2, that part of it is part of having the state employee population and having the contract with the state employees. And then the phase 3 would be adding in the individual market, which would obviously be a little more complex than dealing directly with employers. So that's how we have it set up. We're looking forward to seeing the responses that we get, and then working forward on the RFP.
Didn't the governor's plan last time, when they opened it up to employers, did it say that the employer had to sign up their entire workforce, or could certain individuals within that employment sign up? Was it the complete all their employees for any individual employer, or was it case by case? Because they were asking, I know it was voluntary on the employer's part as to whether they were going to pay the premium or ask their employees to pay. So I don't know how they could have asked their employees to pay and sign them up and force them to pay unless, they just took it out of their paycheck. I don't know if that was clear.
The original RFP had options for the employer. I believe they were options that, all the employees or partial employees. There were some options there. And we haven't, that's something that we're looking for responses from the provider community to see how that would work and maybe the best way to design that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, any other questions before we go to the floor? We'll probably have you, just so the committee knows, my goal is to get the housing bill out next week and the economic development bill, which may include something on this, the following week. So we'll have time. So we'll probably have you back, Beth, either late next week or, the commissioner, and we'll have some conversations in the interim. But we probably won't put pen to paper until the week after town meeting. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Joyce, I'm sorry. We will have you in with your additional slides. The stuff you gave us this morning was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll go to the floor in 5 minutes.